back to another daily cribbage. Today we are back with some AI challenges. Last time we took down hard, and now we're on to Crazy Ninja. Let's see what the Crazy Ninja has in store for us. We start off as Pwn, and what do we see? So let's take our time, let's explain what we're doing. So we split up our hand into a few pieces. We've got the low cards, we've got ace 3. We've got the mid cards, the 7, 8, 9. And a high card of a king. The mid cards here form a nice run, so that would be 5 points. That's 7, 8 is 2 points for 15, and 7, 8, 9 is 3 points for the run. It's our opponent's crib, so we want to throw away something of the minimal value, and the kinds of things that come to mind are like ace king, maybe even ace 3 sometimes. So remember that if you have connected cards, they make more runs. Ace 3 isn't really connected, you need a 2, but whenever you do have a 2, it forms quite a lot of points, because not only is there a run of 3, it also contains a 5 in the 2, 3. What do we like? So what's going to make more points for us? 7, 8, 9, 3, or 7, 8, 9, ace? Well, we have to think about what are the possible top cards in order to answer that question. So, for instance, if we keep the ace, then the top cards that allow us to make extra 15s are going to be a 5, ace 9, 5, 6s, and 7s. Whereas if we keep the 3, then the things that are going to make us extra 15s are going to be 5s, 3, 5, 7, 4s, 3, 4, 8, and 3s, 3, 3, 9. So that's all pretty similar, because the number of each of those cards, they correspond to each other, right? So there are if we want to make 15 with a 7, we need another 7, and there are 3 other 7s. And if we want to make 15 with 3s and 9s, we need another 3, and there's 3 3s left in the deck. That's all pretty straightforward. The other thing is that if we keep an ace, then there are other pairs of cards. Well, no, we can't think of pairs of cards here, because this is the hand. If we keep the 4, if we keep the 3, this doesn't really help us make more runs or anything. The ace as well is pretty similar, and since ace and 3 are both pretty similar for how our hand's going to improve, we could think about how our hand is going to change on the play. So, would we rather have a 3 or an ace for the play? One of the natural things is the 3, 9 in our hand, and this is a slight combo for the play. Because we're Pwn, we're going to be leading first, and one of the natural sequences of plays is to lead a 3. If our opponent pairs a 3, then we can go 9, which takes us up to 15, we get 2 points. And if our opponent pairs that 9, taking us from 15 to 24, then we have the 7 to make 31. So we trade a lot there, and we come out slightly ahead. And by ahead, I mean we've scored 4 points and our opponent scored 4 points, but that's pretty good as Pwn, because we have the disadvantage of playing first. Our opponent gets to react to everything. On the other hand, if we keep the ace, then we might lead something like 8. If our opponent plays a 10, we can go 9, and then we have the ace in the back in order to guarantee at least 1 go. So, not the worst. We're not going to get through the play without scoring at least 1 point, or that's what we hope. So with that, I think I'm going to go ace king here and see what happens. A 5 on top, that's always a card that improves our hand, but 5s are always better for the dealer. That's what I like to say. And here we go. We go double 3, 9. And now I say that 5s are always better for the dealer. Now this is a slight joke. 5s they can be better for pawn, but the point is that almost always, even if it looks like a good 5 for pawn, the dealer's going to get a lot of points out of the 5 because of how many 10s there are in the game. Okay, so 21 versus 10 here, and we have a choice. We've got a big choice here. So we've got to run 3 through 6, and our 5 is doubled. So the maximum number of points we could keep in hand is this classic hand, 4 double 5 6, and you should instantly recognize this hand. This is a big 12-point hand, really strong. If we were pawn, we would clearly throw away 3 jack here, keeping this 4 5 6. Nothing else to do. However, we are the dealer, so we get to try and improve the quality of our crib if we like. And a few ways to do that would be to, well, the main way I see is to throw away 5 jack. We had to choose which 5, probably the 5 of spades to keep 2 hearts in hand. And what does this do? Well, let's put some points in our crib, put some, sow some seeds for more points because we've got a 5 in there. And it leaves us with a fairly strong run in our hand, 6 points worth of run and 2 points in the crib. So immediately we are forfeiting 4 points, right? Because this combination right here, throwing away 5 jack, immediately nets us 8 points instead of the 12 points by throwing away 3 jack. However, we set ourselves up for a better crib. Unfortunately, the way in which averages work, it means that you have to be expecting. So here we're saying that our cribs are improving a lot, instead of having an average of, what would it be for 3 jack? I don't know. It's fairly mediocre. Let's say it's around 4. We're increasing our average up to maybe about 7 or something like this. So it's over 2 points. So 2 points of that improvement is going to be because we're throwing 2 points into the crib, but we're getting an extra point or so on average in improvement. But that's not compensating us nearly enough for all of the points we're throwing away. 12 points is just a huge number of points, and it's very hard to say no. Opponent leads a 4. We can get, is it, say, keeping the double 6 9, so for instance, throwing away ace 2. The nice thing about this hand is that we double down on all of the 8s that turn up. If ever we hit an 8, then this turns our 6-point hand into a 16-point hand. Really nice. We're not in a position where we're desperate for those kinds of points right now. We're looking to try and get to around 44. We want to play solid positional, and I think that for that reason we can go, okay, so if we want to keep double 6 9 in hand and we want to discard a little bit more safely, we could discard something like ace 7. But if we do that, then we're forfeiting and we want to build up a level of comfort from that point. So let's do that. That is 22. Opponents really doesn't fear the 5s, or they might have 2 5s in their hand and they are quite worried about leaving open, say, a 7 to form a run if they played a 5 there. So a couple of things that we can do. We could play the 7 now to take it up to 29 with the expectation that if our opponent has an ace, then they get 1 point for the go and another point for the next go, which is only 2 points. So that's a reasonable defense. It's not the best, but it's fine. Or we could play the 2 now, and if our opponent has a 5, then... Oh, sorry, the other point is that If we play the 7 now and our opponent says go, the unfortunate thing is that we have to play our 2. Now that does give us 2 points, but it does mean our opponent gets to play their last 2 cards together. And if our opponent, and as our opponent's played, they've got 4-6 in hand. One of the most common hands that we would put them on here is 5-10 or 5-5. And in both of those cases, they're getting 2 points plus the go, so 3 points out of the remaining cards. And so we could try and play a bit more fancy here, and we could play a 2 in order to draw out a 5. The only problem, of course, with playing 2 is opponent could have 3s. If our opponent has a 3 and they play it, we're kind of stuck. We've given away a lot of points. So let's mitigate that by just playing the 7. I think that we are happy to take these 2 points. We are quite ahead. Opponent did have a 3, so... but then that means our opponent's hand mostly a... I was going to say it was a flush. It's just all red. It's got no points in it. Strange. We could have a look quickly at what our opponent did. Our opponent took the hand 3, 4, 6, 7, Queen, King, and threw away Queen, King, instead of throwing away 6, 7. That's fine. They got very unlucky, not getting many points there. Okay, so this puts us firmly in the lead. Our opponent says that it's all okay, or they are sulking, one or the other. And we look down, and we see 6 points in the 2, 4, 9, 9. It's hard to say no to 6 points. If we were desperate for points, we could keep the 8, 9, 9 together. 8, 9, 9 has the potential to improve to 10 points with a 7 or a 10, or maybe even 11 points with the right suit. But we don't need to risk this. There's only 8 cards in the deck that would give us 10 points there. And those 8 cards, that's 8 out of 46, that's occurring around like 16% of the time or so. Right. And 16% of the time isn't enough in order to raise the average up enough for it to be worth it. I'm going to throw away 8-Jack. 8-Jack is not a particularly exciting discard, but sometimes that's what you have to do. Okay, opponent leads a 3. What's our opponent hand look like at this stage? Or what are the ones we're scared of? I guess things that we're scared of are double runs that have a 3 in them. We have some blocks against that, so we hold some 4s. We hold a 4 and a 2, so opponent doesn't have as many of those. Sometimes you'll have multiples of the lead cards. So if our opponent has lots of 3s, that would combo with 9s and 6s. Mostly 9s actually, but we hold 9s in our hand, so our opponent has fewer of those combos. The other scary thing would be, because there's an 8 on the top, there are combos that involve 3s and 8s. There's hands that are based on 3, 4, 8. So what do I like here? I think that because we have so many 9s, I'm happy to play a 9. And if our opponent has another 3, so be it. We'll just play another 9 on top, taking us to 24. And we'll see what they have after that. Maybe we'll pair one of their low cards if they have a double run. Okay, we see 3, 4 now. And what our opponent's kind of done here is that they have minimize the entropy. So this is a phrase that, or this is a technique that I'm coining. So every time you play a card, you're revealing a bit more information about your hand. And the amount of information that exists is somehow related to entropy, right? So if you have some kind of random event and you start to know some small bits of some small facts about this event, you can start to piece together what happened, But if somebody gives you, but it depends on what kinds of facts you get. Some facts will tell you more about the event than others. And sometimes you're going to get a piece of information that can only mean, that can tell you rand 2 or another ace and some tens. It's very unlikely for them at that point, if they gave us an ace, for them to have cards such as a 7, because ace 3 7 doesn't really combo in a crazy way, or in a way that gives many points. It maybe means that they have a 5 or a so I think we're quite happy to pair this 4, and we're in a position where we're happy to take a few possible 6s, and the hands that we're most worried about are hands that are going to score the most, which in this case, with the 8 coming on top, there are possible 24 possible hands that score 24 that our opponent could have, and a lot of those contain 6 because we haven't seen any of the 6s. So I want to avoid playing into that, and I would like to. Okay, well, that's the thing. Our opponent could have the last 8, and we're playing into that if we pair the 8. But I want to say that our opponent has 6s so often that we would rather get this. Our opponent has 6s so often that it's something we should avoid. Okay. Opponent revealed a 5, 8, 5. So they could have a different kind of hand altogether. They could have 8, 2, 5 style hands, which can also work in 10s. So it's possible that our opponent has a 2 and a 10 here in hand. The things that we're a bit more scared of course, are if our opponent has 6, 7. If our opponent has 6, 7 left, then leading the 9 is going to give our opponent 15, and then we'll play our 5, and then our opponent play the 7, and they'll get a run of 3 points with the 5, 6, 7. That's kind of scary. So let's play the 5 here. We give away 2 points to any 10s our opponent has, but that's okay. We don't give up any more points than that. And why am I okay with that? It's mostly because we're doing extremely well and we're far ahead, and our opponent, if they had a 10 there, doesn't have, it means that they don't have the double run in hand. Okay. Let's move on. We are 91, opponent is 63. We look down at 4, 5, double queen, double king. If we wanted to risk everything right now, we could throw away 4, 5, hit the jack on the top of the deck for 16 points, and have a fantastic time. We don't need to do such things, that's kind of reckless. We should instead recognize that we have at least 8 points in hand, and 8 points is a lot more than 4 points. This way we don't get to throw a 5 into the crib, but remember why you throw 5s into the crib. You throw a 5 into the crib in order to catch out all of the 10s that your opponent throws away. But if the purpose of throwing away a 5 is to catch 10s, why not keep a 5 in your hand when you've got so many 10s in your hand? Let's keep these points. We're going to make it to 99 points at least. The 9 on top doesn't help us. It combos slightly with our opponent's lead, which is an 8, and we're left to wonder whether to play a 5 or a king here. I think playing the king is very reasonable. We have to play a 5, no choice here. Opponent is playing some scary cards. Okay, less scary now, so opponent's revealed 6 points so far, and that could go up to 16 points at the worst, so let's give him a 10. And it wasn't as bad as all that. They've got 8 points, I think it was. So both have similar points in hand. We get a pair of queens in the crib and a 3-4. So that's as it would have happened if we threw